Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Incubator Podcast. We are live at the CHNC Symposium in Denver, Colorado, and we are joined this afternoon by the team members from the HIE Focus Group. We are joined by Mary Ravenis. Am I pronouncing this correctly?
Maria Dizon.
Oh, Dizon. I didn't have your last name. I'm so sorry. We have Girija Natarajan and Rakesh Rao. Thank you guys for joining us on the podcast.
We're so happy to be here.
No, we're very happy to have you on. So you're focusing on HIE, but before we came on air, we were talking about this work that you guys are doing on a very interesting type of HIE. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and start us off there?
Oh, sure. Do you want to start,
Sure.
Rakesh?
So, we talk about hypoxic injury usually in the delivery room or in the
Right.
perinatal period.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been hypothermia that's used for mitigating injury in that situation. But once those trials were published, there was a lot of interest in looking at hypothermia in other patient populations, adults and older children, to see if hypoxic injury post-arrest can be improved by treating them with hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at our CHNC database to see if we could identify patients with what we call post-arrest hypoxic-ischemic encephalopathy, because the trials from the pediatric population actually mostly excluded newborn infants in that.
Right.
So we collected data from babies who were between 0 to 29 days of age, more than 35 weeks, and who had a diagnosis of hypoxic arrest and were treated with or without therapeutic hypothermia. And this was a retrospective study looking at outcomes on those infants.
I have to say, it's impressive that you even had that data. It's retrospective data. So the fact that you guys even had the fields in the data to be able to look at that is incredible. How many patients were you able to look at?
So I would clarify, we collect all the data prospectively.
Uh-huh.
We just looked at it retrospectively.
Okay.
I think we had about 251 patients,
Wow.
of which about 108 were treated with hypothermia and the remaining 143 were not.
Incredible.
So we were able to have some reasonable
Yeah.
group comparisons out there.
And everybody listening to this episode is now asking, what did you find?
You're burying the lead.
So Maria, do you want to talk about
No, you go ahead.
So it was interesting. What we did find was that the age at which most of these babies were admitted was around 3 days for the whole cohort.
Okay.
Median age of 3 days, a little bit earlier for babies who were treated with hypothermia. Most of these babies came from other hospital NICUs, not from within your own hospitals. And the median time of cooling was about 35, 36 hours of age. We looked at discharge without any feeding support as our primary outcome for this study, because we had very limited neuroimaging data in this cohort. And what we did find was that hypothermia, infants who were treated with hypothermia, there was no difference in discharge home without feeding support. So that means without a nasogastric tube or a gastrostomy tube. We also looked at some other secondary outcomes like length of stay. So even though it looked like length of stay was getting some benefit from hypothermia, but when you adjusted for different factors, that was not really significant.
Okay. Well, I was interested in the outcomes, but I'm also interested in that group of babies. What are the major diagnoses or inciting events that led to, a secondary cardiopulmonary collapse sort of thing?
So we looked at a lot of different diagnoses, and we sort of clumped them into 5 or 6 major reasons. And the primary reason for referral was actually neurological. And secondary, other reasons like ALTs or cyanotic episodes and those kind of events. So about a third of the patients who were in the hypothermia group were actually referred for neurological reasons. So I guess people recognize probably that post-arrest there's an opportunity for exposing them to hypothermia, and probably referred to them for that reason.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, that is exciting work. I always wonder about groups studying HIE. For a long time, our groups studying HIE were really focused on the development of protocols and aligning with the cooling trials. What is the group working on now in terms of supporting babies with HIE?
Well, one of the most important things for us is trying to really understand what the long-term effects are in these different groups, right? But at this point in time, we're a little bit limited because within CHNC, we're confined to in-hospital outcomes. And so our group over the past couple of years has been working on understanding what kind of information we can gain from the sites within the consortium. What do sites collect? And then having found out what would be reasonable things to ask from the consortium, then we actually have developed a database. So that started this year, and we're slowly adding sites, getting IRBs for sites, data use agreements for sites, and collecting that data. So hopefully in the near future, we're going to be able to actually put long-term neurodevelopmental outcome with all this that we've all this information we've gathered so far.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Other goals for the focus group?
We are always looking at new ways to look at the data. One immediate interest that the group is exploring is looking at HIE in the preterm population. There's been one large randomized control trial in the Neonatal Research Network, which the preliminary results were presented, but it hasn't quite been published. But we do have a sizable cohort in the CHND database, so that's probably one of our next areas of interest. We as a group are looking to write certain review articles on biomarkers of HIE, and those are some
it's
other
one of
things.
the focus group that is always one of, I think you guys are one of the most always innovative focus groups. I think last year we talked about some of the work that is trying to be done on looking at the timing of cooling in the case of traditional, I guess, HIE. I think you're definitely showing us that this is a space that can always benefit from more investigation and more research. And so we thank you for doing all that work.
So one of the things that our original leaders of this group had always counseled us, Ann Massaro, was don't just use the database, but use the network. And so we've really tried to grab hold of that idea and do that. In one of the recent sessions this morning, we were talking about a little bit of the logistical challenges of waiting in line for data polls and how that takes some time. And in the meantime, there are other things we can do. So we always have a lot of sort of fire, what are they called? Sticks in the fire, fires in the oven, pots on the stove, something like that. But so
Something cooking.
Yeah, so we always have to have a couple things cooking so that we're ready to go with more information.
Well, I think what's exciting about the care of infants with HIE, obviously, looking at interventions that would be an adjunct to cooling. We're all still looking for that, looking for the babies who don't get cooled and the mild and the little babies. But I'm just thrilled about the information that you guys can get about some of the supportive measures that different hospitals are probably doing just by culture of the hospital. Things like holding during cooling, feeding during cooling, pressors and sedation. I think those are still so ripe for study, and I think you guys have a great database to be able to do those things. Yeah. So we're very much looking forward to what you guys have next.
Yeah, and even outside. Oh, I'm sorry, Girija. No, I was just going to say, even outside of this more research stuff we do, we use each other to query each other. Have you started feeding during cooling? Yeah. Do you hold during cooling? What are your protocols like? So as a group, we try to share that kind of information. And so that's kind of outside of
intra.
Yeah.
Intra-group and inter. Yeah. But that's very cool.
So it's really nice to be part of that network.
I was just going to say another of our kind of ambitious visions is to look at a 15-year landscape of how cooling has changed both practices and outcomes.
That's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, thank you all for dropping by and for sharing your thoughts and the work that you're doing. Congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for
Thank you all.
having
Bye-bye.
us. Bye-bye.